This lesson is about the constant rule of derivatives. And the way you would write the derivative of a constant would be d over dx c. And the way you read this would be the derivative of the function with respect to x, or the derivative of c with respect to x. Notice we use the square brackets. We use square brackets to enclose everything, including expressions which use parentheses, to be cleaner and easier to read. So the derivative of c, which is a constant, equals 0. Let's do another. What is the derivative of 3? So what is the derivative of 3? 0. Why? Because 3 is a constant, and the derivative of any constant is 0. So let's try another. What is the derivative of 1/2? Now, unlike the other numbers, 1/2 is a fraction, but even though it is a fraction, it is also a constant. It's not changing. So because it's a constant, the derivative of 1/2 equals 0. If there's only a constant in the expression without a variable, then the derivative equals 0. So let's clear the space and try some more. If y equals 32, what is dy over dx of y? So you would say this, the derivative of y with respect to x. So if y equals 32, the derivative of y with respect to x, because 32 is a constant, equals 0. Okay, another. If I'm going to change the color. If f of x equals e, what is f prime of x? Now remember, f prime of x is the same thing. It's equivalent to writing d over dx. It's exactly the same thing. Basically, it means the derivative of a function. So if f of x equals e, what is f prime of x, or what is the derivative of x? Now, if you remember your work, your previous work using exponents, we have a number called Euler's number, and Euler's number equals approximately 2.71828, and the number continues. The digits continue to infinity because this is an irrational number. But even though it is irrational, it is also a constant. Therefore, f prime of x equals 0. Now let's try another. What is f prime of x if x equals -7? So -7 is a constant, therefore f prime of x equals 0. Next, what is the derivative of pi? So let's think back. What does pi mean? Pi is an irrational number. It's 3.14, and the number continues. It is irrational, but is also a constant. Therefore, the derivative of pi equals 0. So we've done a number of problems, and all the constants we've worked with equal 0, but what is the proof that this actually is the case? How do we know that the derivative of every constant equals 0? Let's go through the proof using the formal definition of derivatives. So, formal definition is, for any x, the limit as h approaches 0 of f x plus h minus f of x over x plus h minus x. Now let's simplify this to the limit as h approaches 0 of f x plus h minus f of x over h, because the x and the x cross out. So if we let f of x equal c, where c is a constant, I like to write proofs out in longhand because it's easier to think clearly about. So if f of x equals c, where c is a constant, the limit as h approaches 0 of c, so f of x plus h is constant, minus f of x, which is also a constant, over h, equals the limit as h approaches 0 of 0 over h. And any number such as h divided into 0 will equal 0. So the limit of 0 as h approaches 0 equals 0. So finally, f prime of x equals 0. Now, this is the formal definition, but I always like to do a reality check and think, what is, because we can get lost in numbers, but what is the reality of working with derivatives, slopes, and remember, we're talking about the rate of change. So let's do our reality check. This is our intuitive explanation. So the derivative, I'm going to write it in longhand, of any function is the rate of change of that function. Now let's draw a graph. So here we have y, x, and here we have our f of x. So f of x equals a constant. So remember, the rate of change is delta y over delta x. So the first thing we see is y is not changing. There is no change in delta y, or the change in delta y equals 0. We have x changing throughout our line describing the function, but y is not changing. So the rate of change, or the change in y over the change of x, rate of change equals 0, because delta y over delta x equals 0. There is no change in y. So I hope you enjoyed this coverage of the constant rule of derivatives. It's actually very simple, but just like a lot of simple concepts, sometimes it's a little bit easy to get confused. So hopefully this clarified any questions you might have, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you.